Welcome back, everyone. So, patch 9.0.5 has arrived, and between it and a whole big wave of hotfixes, a whole bunch of gearing has actually changed. So today, we're going to go through how to take a fresh level 60 character to fully in best-in-slot gear. Now, don't worry if you're only here for the new VP change or the fresh juicy bits, don't worry, hit up the video chapters. Also, by the way, it's a new month, and that means new Patreon. So, to add to the sword and shield that we just did, you can now get the bow pin as well, and the three of them are a pretty damn nice trifecta. Plus, the sticker, and fresh art. And if you're patroned through March, that will be yours, along with exclusive videos like these that, detail what's going on behind the scenes here, as well as the daily briefing and a bunch of other things too. Patrons, thank you very much, and with that said, let's get geared. Let's say you've just hit level 60. What do you do now? What will your initial gearing plan actually look like? Well, a good starting point, regardless of your endgame goals, is to aim towards getting an item level of around 180 to 190. And the good news is you'll be able to reach this in no time from a range of activities, and once you've got that item level, then you can get into the real meat of the endgame of this expansion. Now, the quickest way, as it often is in World of Warcraft, is to get your better geared friends to give you a hand. So do a world tour of Mythic Zeros, maybe tag along with some friends to do some lower keys, or maybe go to your guild's alt raid. That stuff will all be a lot easier now that we're in the middle of a season. That's not for everybody though, so here's how to get by without extra help. And we're going to start with some of the stuff that we recommend doing first. Crafted gear will get you instantly item level 160 plus, and it'll do that with ideal stats plus sockets on the jewelry. Now sure, it'll cost you a few thousand gold, but it's a pretty good starting option for those who are going to be spamming Mythic Zeros to get a starter set and can't get boosted by friends. If it actually drops for you, the item level 207 gear from the weekly world boss can be a massive boost to one slot, and it only takes about 5 minutes to do. So hit up your world map each week, find out where the world boss is, and do it. Also, these world bosses drop Covenant conduits and legendary recipes, so do be sure to snag that kill each week. Next, the old school way, dungeon grinding. So look, unless you're totally new to Shadowlands, we do not recommend bothering with normals or heroics. The item level from them is very low, and the real version of a dungeon with all of its mechanics, so what you actually need to understand to fully play the game, that is Mythic. So focus on doing Mythics for item level 183 gear. Now you can get gear from each Mythic Zero dungeon once per week, so just doing them all is ideal. Then we've got LFR for eye level 187 to 194. And to be honest with you, as with normal and heroic dungeons, we really don't see a lot of value here, but that gear could be useful, so if you're not planning to play with friends, then yeah, this is an option that doesn't involve doing Mythic Plus dungeons, so it might be relevant to you. Unrated PvP is a gearing pathway that has not changed since launch. Now for a recap, unrated gear starts at eye level 158, same as say a heroic dungeon, but it can be upgraded to item level 197 with honor points. Now that means that through this system you can get item level 197 in any slot that you want pretty quickly. That can be very useful for things like say your weapon. The only limiting factor is how fast you can get honor, and with the various things we'll cover later, really you can get a lot of honor pretty damn fast. Completing your Covenant's campaign will provide you with a full set of Covenant armor. Now that Covenant armor starts at item level 155, but it can be upgraded to 197 with Anima, and that's at a vendor in your Covenant Sanctum. Now, if you've got the Anima and the Renown to actually unlock all of that gear, and you're more of a solo-focused player, then this is actually a great way to fill in slots, especially now that it is a bit easier to get Anima. And what I mean there is that now raid bosses drop a bunch more Anima than they did at launch, and also if you've capped on souls at your Covenant, then the souls weekly quest will give you 500 Anima, so that can help you along a bit. World quest scale from item level 148 to 194. However, there are actually little breakpoints based on your renown for it moving up those item levels. Now, the reason we're not going into too much detail here is that generally all the other methods will outpace World Quest gear. It's not really important, and it is not something we believe that you should focus on. Torghast has seen no big updates in 9.0.5 beyond account-wide layers, which certainly will help get your new alts up to speed. And of course, you're still going to be going here to get Soul Ash, which is of course required to craft and upgrade your legendary items, which range from iLevel 190 to 235. Now, in the adventure journal in-game, you can actually see where all of the needed legendary powers come from, so you can just go get which ones are good for your class and spec. There are a few other ways to get gear, but they're not major, so the 4 main reputations sell 164 to 200 gear, and then the Maw's Wrath of the Jailer event, that can get you a 183 once per week. But overall, those things are not super impactful. Initially, just focus on the item level first. I would say don't bother, say, doing world quests when you could instead just do Mythic 0 dungeons that would replace any of that world quest gear anyway. So that's quite important. Basically, prioritize your high eye-level rewarding activities like the world boss first. Then, enlist the help of friends if possible, because if you can funnel gear to one character by enlisting the help of your geared friends and doing, say, some dungeons, you could hit 180 plus in a single evening. And if you're doing this in Mythic Plus, even in the low-level keys, that's very ideal, because that gear that you get can actually be upgraded via Valor Points. So if you happened to get an item with perfect stats or a great trinket like the Inscrutable Quantum Device, then, well, that'll stand to you in the future. Then next, events and weeklies. So the weekly quests for Honor and Conquest from the Orbos PvP vendors are great. You'll be able to pick up item level 200 Conquest trinkets and jewelry very quickly if you do those weeklies, and that is a great boost. Now, these will also get you loads of honor, which of course can be used to upgrade your unranked gear to 197, but if you do plan to fully gear up your character via PvP, you might want to hold on to your honor points and use that on conquest gear. So, doing these plus the 2 dungeon weeklies, that'll grant you a lot of anima, and you could use that anima to upgrade your Covenant gear to 197 if you really want to. And a combination of that, unranked PvP, getting some of that early conquest gear, and then Mythic 0 or low Mythic Plus keys, that will get you geared up pretty damn quickly. Then, of course, you want to check for weekly events. The Arena and Battleground ones, plus the weekly Brawl, well, those will net you lots of honor and some conquest, which is very useful. Now, for Time Walking weeks, well, the Time Walking dungeons only drop 158s, which is not great, but the weekly quest to do 5 Time Walking dungeons gets you an iLevel 200 bit of gear. Then the Mythic Dungeon event, well, that is the most important here, because it means bonus loot, and doing 4 of them will actually get you a bit of heroic Nathria loot. So, Mythic Dungeon Week, it will save you hours. Alright, so once you're above 180, the real gearing game begins. And in Shadowlands, it's mostly split into 3 separate-ish paths of gearing. You've got Raid, Mythic Plus, and Rated PvP. Now, to gear up your character, just choose which one of those you want to do, or if you want to gear up a bit faster, well, you can do them all. We will, of course, now explain how you can get the most out of each system, and believe me, there's a lot of tips and tricks that will save you a lot of time. Quite a bit has changed in the Mythic Plus system since launch, not only from a gearing standpoint, but also in terms of dungeon difficulty. The big one, though, is, of course, Valor. So Valor Points are used to upgrade gear obtained from Mythic dungeons from item level 184 all the way up to item level 220. The only sources of these Valor Points are completing Mythic Plus dungeons and doing your Covenant callings. Now, you'll receive 35 Valor for completing a standard calling and 50 for an epic one. And we actually still don't know how much Valor you get from doing a Mythic Plus dungeon, or how that Valor will scale up with key level, but I'd expect it to be fairly low to start with, and the TLDR will just be do Mythic dungeons and do the highest key you can. Now, each upgrade that you do will increase an item's item level by 3 or 4, and the amount of Valor points needed to upgrade it will depend on the slot, and you can see the costs on screen right now. And yeah, they are a little bit pricey. Now, for items above 220, well, the upgrade system is not going to cover those. You will have to rely on the Great Vault as usual. I should note, though, that upgrade values up to 226 have been data mined, but they're just not implemented in-game, so Blizzard theoretically could change that with a hotfix down the road. End of Dungeon loot is also seeing some changes here. So the chest is now always going to drop 2 items, even if the run was not completed on time. However, if the key was depleted, then the second item will be actually lower in item level. So there's that going on. Now, the 20% chance for extra loot for each keystone level above Mythic plus 15, that still does exist, and the item level cap does remain at 210. Now, if you want dungeon gear that is beyond that level, it's either going to be a Valor upgrade or a drop from the Great Vault. Now, there have also recently been a large wave of dungeon nerfs across the board, and this means, major bosses have been nerfed, some of the timers are more lenient, so really now is the perfect time to get stuck into pushing those Mythic Plus keys now the Blizzard have had a few months to actually iterate on the balance of the dungeons. So that's the system. How will you actually engage with it though? Well, that's what really matters, and here is some strategy to effectively manage your Valor points as best as possible. Target best in slot items. Now that you can upgrade items, your goal is to find the best items that you can, the ones that are best for your character, and then to upgrade those. So look for the ideal, the perfect secondary stats. Look for gem sockets, even maybe tertiary stats. Don't waste time going to dungeons that, don't have an item that you will want to keep. It's all about focusing BIS and then upgrading those items to a high item level. Of course, unless you're helping out your team, in which case, go do all the dungeons. Also, try stacking in a group with as many people as possible that can trade you a BIS item from a specific dungeon. So this is where playing with some of your high item level friends will be pretty damn useful. Then also, do the highest difficulty that you possibly can. The cap on Valor and the static upgrade cost does actually mean that the most efficient way to gear is to start from the highest point possible in terms of item level. Now, the changes to end of dungeon loot, they actually mean that failing a higher key is more important than timing a lower key. So focus on those higher keys if you can. Also, take advantage of easier affix weeks to push keys higher than usual. This is actually a great way to optimize getting Keystone Master and thus unlocking that 220 upgrade cap. And I believe Wowhead usually posts a tier list every week that basically tells you what the easiest dungeons are for that week's affixes. Then hold on to Valor and use it properly. Using Valor points on an item that's not part of your best in slot set is actually a total waste. You don't want to do it. The Great Vault items also are upgradable. So because they're the highest item level stuff that you'll be getting, you do want to wait each week until you open the Great Vault before you work out where to spend your Valor, just in case you get a really good drop from it. Next, all Mythic Plus runs are now worth Valor unless you are capped. And that does mean that doing lower keys used to be a total waste of time, but now everybody needs Valor, and this basically means that you should be better able to convince your guildies or your friends to help you out with keys, because even if there's not a great item in that dungeon, they can still get some Valor points, and they'll probably want that. Essentially, rating is the same but better. The drop rate of gear per boss has been buffed by about 33%, in addition to Blizzard increasing the drop chance for weapon tokens, and this translates to there being 1 bit of loot per 5 players in the raid group per boss that you kill. Then, as a slight aside, potency conduits now drop from Castle Nathria. Very welcome change to conduit acquisition that means you won't be having to grind Stygian them all as much, I hope. Now, if you've got some gold to spare, another thing you can do is purchase raid BOEs from the auction house. Now, this is hard to recommend given the cost, but it is worth thinking about if you're a cost-insensitive individual. Now, some tips and tricks. Kill the last 2 bosses in Castle Nathria as soon as is possible. Doing so will unlock their loot table from the Great Vault, and that means that you can get those higher item level items from the vault, so that's good. Also, Hall of Fame has now been completed for both the Horde and the Alliance, and that does mean that cross-realm Mythic is now a possible thing. So this, in conjunction with the recent big waves of Mythic nerfs and increasingly higher average item levels across the player base, does make Mythic more of a accessible thing. So if you've got heroic gear and you're the sort of person who wants to take that step up, you could consider trying the first few bosses with, maybe a really good pug or your guild plus pugs. You can also then join BOE farming groups via the group finder, and you can go in there and farm trash between the bosses for a chance to get those BOE items, bind and equip. Surprisingly, this actually works out around to be the same amount of time spent per number of drops you get as clearing raid bosses, and it is much easier. As for PvP, it's the same as before. Buy the gear that you want with Conquest, upgrade it with Honor to as high as your rating will let you. This is the most simple version of the gearing mountain, but there are still a few things for you to keep in mind. So, be sure to purchase your Trinket 2 set first, as that will give you a big boost to your versatility, and once you've done that, replace gear that has got no or low versatility first, as versatility is the big important PvP stat. Now, you still will want to farm Honor to ensure that your Conquest grind, does not fall behind. I'd recommend doing the weeklies for that because they get you a bunch of Honor. Also, it is currently much easier to push rating in rated battlegrounds than it is in 2 and 3 arenas. And the reason why here is there's been a massive influx in basically gladiator players flooding the lower to mid-level brackets and boosting other players. And that actually means that just improving naturally in your rating is a lot harder these days. So that's a bit tricky. RBGs are definitely the one to do if you can, and they are an entirely different experience to unrated battlegrounds, especially if you're in a pre-made group and you've all got voice comms and you can shot call and stuff like that. So that's a big thing to consider. It's my personal next step back. Then of course Conquest is a weekly capped currency, so be sure not to overcap and waste it, and also only buy the gear that you want to keep forever. And that means identifying your best in slot gear, working out what order you want to purchase it in, and then, purchasing it in that order and then upgrading it. Now, of course, you could always go for a blended gearing strategy, getting some stuff from PvP, some from Raid, some from Mythic Plus, and that is, of course, the fastest overall way to gear up your character. The Great Vault will likely be the main source of big upgrades this expansion, though that will depend on how much content you do and to what difficulty you do it. Now, welcome change for raiders in 9.0.5 is that the bosses killed threshold for the raid loot category in the Great Vault has changed from 3,710 to 369, so you'll get 3 options if you clear 9 out of 10 and are still progressing on Denathrius. Okay, next up, tips and tricks for the Great Vault. If one of your raid vault choices is a likely pickup from the raid itself, it is a very good idea to first clear that boss in the raid and then work out what to do with the vault, because it feels pretty damn bad if you've got a few options in the vault, you click in one of them, you do the raid, and you just get the same bit of gear again. So generally choose from the vault after you've done the raid, or at least after you've re-cleared your farm bosses. The next, pick an item that will be BIS for you in the future when upgraded, as opposed to a higher item level but worse stats piece of gear. That is totally when being able to unlock 3 options for your Mythic Plus will come in pretty handy. Now, if there are multiple upgrades in the vault that would be good for you and you're not sure which ones, you can always use the Raidbot's top gear tool, and that will actually let you see what is the best choice from your Great Vault. It is so handy. So with that, it's now time for the weekly checklist. Between the strategies laid out in this video and this checklist, you will have absolutely everything you need to finish gearing in World of Warcraft. For the open world, kill the world boss for Anima, a chance at a 207 bit of gear, and 200 conduits. You can then do callings throughout the week for Valor Points, and a chance at 197 gear and item level 200 conduits. And that's it for the world content. Dungeons then. Ensure you get your cap of Valor for the week, then get the 1, 4, and 10 Mythic Plus dungeons done for your Great Vault, and of course at the highest item level that you can reasonably manage. Then for raiding, clear the raid to get gear, complete the 1000 Anima quest, as the bosses in the raid now drop a lot more Anima than they used to, and of course stock up your weekly vault. All in one. If you can quickly wipe out Castle Nathria, it's a pretty damn fast way to get a bunch of useful stuff for your character. Then for your PvP Great Vault, you will want to earn 1250, 2500, and 6250 honor from doing rated PvP. That will unlock your Great Vault PvP options. Then do the weekly PvP quest from the brokers who are located in the Enclave. For legendaries then, of course, get both Wings of Torghast done and check your adventure table for any Soul Ash missions. Then Ouroboros quests. If there's either a time walking or mythic dungeon event up, you can do those quests to get pretty decent gear rewards. Small tip here though, if you're going to pick a 213 or a 220 item from your Great Vault, do try to complete the 4 Mythic Dungeons quest first, as the same item might actually come from that, so you'll want to do that before you do your Great Vault. Once you've gotten all of your best items and upgraded them as far as you can, you're done. Congratulations, you've beaten World of Warcraft, at least until the next patch. So look, that you can achieve best in slot is kind of exciting. You can actually make targets and just work towards them, and you won't have to worry about, Titan Forging or corruptions, that random stuff. So I hope you found today's guide useful, and it's also a great milestone for us because it's the first time that Dakor, my raid leader, has worked on a video. He did an awesome research doc and a real big, chunky, awesome script that we've now sort of boiled and distilled down into what you've seen today. It was a really awesome experience, and we're all very excited to bring you more gameplay-oriented content that's even more in-depth in the future. So, thank you very much. If you want to support us, you can check out the Patreon. And with all that said, I'll see you next time.